Now this might surprise some of you, but despite how I look, I'm not hugely invested in sports. I know, right? But for the longest time, sports and I haven't had the best relationship, whether it's football, basketball, or any other type of ball fondling. I mean, it might have to do with my lack of interest in those sports anyway. Or it could be that time when someone kicked a ball in my face. And unfortunately, my nose is a big target for that stuff. I'm getting off topic, but despite my prejudices against sports, I do like the odd sports anime. I mean, I could care less about watching a game of football, but an anime focused on it, whether it's Blue Lock with its wacky anime science, or Haikyuu with its tense games, I can get behind it funnily enough, and it's probably the closest I'll ever get to sports, other than, wait, what's that over there? Overtake is an original racing anime by Troika. Wait, did he say racing? So this anime was written by Ayumi Sekine and is directed by A. Aoki. And what can I say about the studio? Well, other than having the same name as a turret in Gears of War, they're an interesting studio that's worked on some well-known shows. Now, there is a lot of idol anime on their list, but I did recognise a few shows, such as Al Noah Zero, which was brilliant when I watched it as a kid, as well as Red Creators, which also gained some acclaim over the years. I still haven't watched it, but I've heard good stuff about it, and I've been meaning to give it a go when I have some time. And let's not forget the other companies like Kadokawa or... Wait, Good Smile was involved? Interesting, that's kind of surprising actually. God, I hope they release some cars. Have you guys ever had those Hot Wheels? Oh man, I used to use them all the time, they were just so much fun. Yeah, this was pretty interesting, and despite my hatred of sports, I really like cars. I mean, it's kind of weird because I really like shows like The Grand Tour and Top Gear, and it kind of jump-started my love for cars. Although I can't say it got me interested in motorsports, it really wasn't my thing, but this show brought back so many nostalgic feelings. So I'm really curious about this. Although I still have no idea why they released Overtake and MF Ghost on the same day. It's weird to switch to two different racing animes, and I would rather it didn't do that so that the emotions can sink in. Well, let's not get bogged down by who did what. So why don't we strap in and watch some Overtake. So we begin this story in a photography studio, and we're introduced to Kouya Madoka, a photographer who is doing anything but take pictures. But one day, he's contacted by Saiko Yukihira, a chief editor for a fashion magazine who is also Kouya's ex-wife, and asks him to check out the F5 racing circuit. At first, Kouya is unsure about doing this, but after some motivation by his former partner, he is soon able to push through it as he walks through the pits, meeting different racing teams like the reigning champions Bel Cerezo, with their high-end cars and skilled racing drivers. All is well, but for some reason, Kouya avoids taking pictures of people. It's as if something is holding him back, but he soon stumbles across a team unlike the others. He walks up to Komaki Motors, which is a small father and son team with one single race car in their arsenal, but it's their driver that proves to be the black sheep of the circuit, as Kouya is not sure of what to think about Haruka Asahina, who is seemingly distant with everyone else. So the race begins, and unsurprisingly, Bel Cerezo takes the lead, and Kouya doesn't think much of it until his eyes focuses on Haruka, as the white race car is seemingly able to climb up the ranks despite its limited budget. As he slowly clambers his way to the top spots, it looks like he could very well have a shot in taking a podium position. Until... his tyres failed him when it mattered, and so Bel Cerezo takes the win. This shocks Kouya as he seeps back into reality, but unbeknownst to him, this is all too common for the young racing driver. So Kouya walks through the pits once more and sees Haruka crying in the corner. Kouya witnesses this, and instinctively he raises his camera and with that photo, Kouya and Haruka's paths have been set as we follow these two lives on their quest for greatness. Okay, now that was heartwarming. I didn't expect to get so much character development in such a short time. We already have an idea of who these characters are, their motivations, and what they want to achieve by the end of it. It's really well done, and I like how it sets up the characters' main problems and put them on the journey to fix them. It's kind of surprising for a sports anime to focus a lot on the characters like this. I mean, sports anime have a 50-50 idea of what they achieve, as there's the spectacle of the sports itself, and then there's the story and personal growth behind it. Shows like Haikyuu use the volleyball setting to push the characters forward and give them a reason to care about what they do. But here it's a bit different, as each characters have their struggles and insecurities, but most of the development is done outside the racetrack, which raises some questions, but more on that later. So where do we start? Well, I suppose we start with the animation. I mean, that is the thing with sports anime. It's all about the animations, to the point it makes real life look more boring. Of course, not all sports shows fall into that area, as you can have great shows with decent animation, depending if it serves the purpose of the narrative. Now, how does Overtake fare? Well, I'd say it does a good job. I mean, outside the races, it looks good and the character designs are fine, but for the races, personally, I quite like them. Sure, it's not crazy like with MF Ghost's constant use of power slides, but I do enjoy how we see each race car from different angles. These shots here remind me of actual motorsport races that follow race cars just like that, but other shots bring us close to the races as they climb up the ranks, like we're experiencing what they feel in that moment, watching the landscape speed past them and the G-force hitting their bodies like trucks. And as the anime goes on, these races become even more tense as Haruka slowly overtakes one car over the other, but just misses out on getting the win. It's riveting stuff, especially when we see the racetrack in different weathers like rain. Here we see how dangerous this sport can get by watching characters race with limited visibility, especially on a wet track that can be difficult even with the right tyres. And the visuals lend to portraying that unease perfectly. We even see the consequences of driving in such conditions. The only problem is that for an anime about racing, there aren't a lot of races here, which kind of defeats the purpose. I mean, throughout the whole series, there's only a handful of races, and compared to MF Ghost, where the entire series is devoted to racing, literally it goes on for episodes, so you would be hard pressed to call this a racing anime to say the least. Yeah, that's not to say the anime is bad because of it, but as the episodes go on, I start to realise that the racing is more of a background element to develop the characters, and honestly the characters are so good. Right, let's just dive into it. The characters in the show are surprisingly well developed, which is saying something for a sports anime. I mean, a lot of sports anime characters vary in their development, but compared to Overtake, it doesn't even come close. Sorry Bachara, I like you, but it was—
There's a monster in me.
Right, why don't we have a closer look? So before the events of the anime, Haruka and Kouya's lives have been in a spiral, which had led to both characters being unable to grow. So let's start with Haruka. His main motivations for racing is to reach the pole positions, which is admirable for any underdog, but his inspiration in doing so was brought to him by his father, who was a skilled racer in his own right. As a child, Haruka would wish his father the best when he went to the racetrack, and his father would nod in approval, promising he would bring back the win. Every single day, he would do this for the man he saw as an idol. You could say he was his Michael Schumacher. I don't think I should make a reference. But that would all change on that one fateful day. Conditions were wet, worse for any car, let alone these high-end machines, and history has shown us that racing in said conditions has led to many fatalities. And for Haruka's father, the story remains unchanged. He didn't come home that day. He didn't come home the next day, or the day after, or the day after. But Haruka was there, wishing his dad the best of luck. He couldn't remember his dad's face that day. But even for an adult, hearing the news would horrify anyone, and it changed Haruka to the core, disregarding any good wishes from his friends or family, not allowing anyone to get close to him, in case history repeats itself. I mean, what are well wishes but empty promises? It doesn't mean anything. It's about my performance. Keep that all to yourself and let me show you what I can do. Perhaps these were Haruka's thoughts since that day. Yet he keeps a ragged talisman in the race car which belonged to his dad. A memento from his idol perhaps? It doesn't matter. I'll give it my all and I'll reach the podium. But man, that was deep. But we learn this through the course of the anime, and as we do, we get an appreciation towards Haruka, being able to follow his dad's footsteps to become a racer, which for some people, that trauma would be too much to bear. Here is Haruka trying to reach the goal, but at the start of the anime, he's still not able to reach the pole position, one because of the lack of sponsorships, but also his emotional distancing which has left him cold. It might not seem to affect his performance at first, but it's still there. And even so, his expert driving was enough to capture the eyes of a famous photographer who doesn't like to take pictures. Kouya was once a brilliant photographer. He would travel around the world taking photos of amazing things. He had everything he wanted, a nice job, a burning passion, and a supportive wife. But that will all change in 2011. Kouya was in a small fishing village completing work for a client, but it was at that time when Japan would be hit by one of the worst earthquakes in history. And this earthquake was a 9 on the Richter scale, which was unheard of. I remember watching the news and seeing those buildings shake, followed by that tsunami. It was unreal for me when I was 13. And then reading up on it and learning about how the people were displaced from their homes, and some are still missing to this day. And it definitely warranted a viewer warning at the beginning of the episode. And Kouya was in one of these towns during this tragic event and was in the process of being evacuated. And we can see how awful these events were for the townspeople who had to flee from their homes. However, Kouya uses his camera to look at the town before it's hit by a tsunami. But as he scours the landscape, he sees a child running through the streets holding a toy, crying as she looks for someone to help her. Kouya recognizes the girl from the previous night and he tries to do something, but he's stopped by one of the residents as the tsunami would hit any minute. She was too far away. There was nothing he could do except watch her through the viewfinder until... And just like that, she was gone, and all that's left of her was the photo Kouya captured seconds before her demise. Time passes and Kouya's pictures circulate, and while he receives some praise, he also receives a lot of hate.
Why didn't you save her? This is what's wrong with our generation. Leave the child to cry. I would have saved her. I would have done something. What a monster. Why didn't you save her? What a monster. Monster, 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 monster.
All this took its toll, and Kouya was not in any state to continue his passion and had become reclusive, even to the point it affected his marriage. And like Haruka, they were both stagnated in their world as they deal with the pains in their lives, but they intersect here as they're brought together by this sport, and their friendship will be a stepping stone to heal from the past as they drive towards the future. I enjoyed how it does this, and it's surprising for a racing anime to do this, but it works so well. All of this would then translate to the plot of the story, as we now have a reason for these characters to succeed, and are behind them every step of the way. It's not just the main characters as well, as each of the side characters also have an important role and develop over the course of the story. Like the Belsariso team, the two main drivers each go through their arcs to become exceptional people, like Toshiki Tokumaru having to deal with his inferiority complex, what would be in the dog's buddy to the main star, Setsuki Harunaga, but he also goes through his own arc, as later in the series, he finds himself in a near-fatal car crash. The show doesn't try to villainize these characters, as each side has its own motivations, flaws and aspirations, and what brings them together is their love for racing. Sure, the racing is not apparent, but once I started to fall for the characters, the few races we do have started to become more impactful. It's the adage of less is more. The racing is used sparingly while using the time to develop the characters, and I find this decision to make a lot of sense, as even though racing is not a huge thing, I was really invested in it. I found myself cheering these characters no matter what side they're on, as it seems that racing is the thing that can make them better, especially the final race of the series. Well, I haven't done this in a while, so I'm going to put a spoiler warning here, so if you guys want to watch this anime for yourself, then just skip right here. I'd recommend you watch it because it is just brilliant. But other than that, let's do this. So after episodes of losing, struggling to get a sponsorship, and being confronted by their past traumas. The final race is about to begin, and the Kamaki Motors team go up against Belsariso, and despite his injuries, Satsuki makes a recovery, although he lets Toshiki take over as the main driver for the team. Kouya is in the press booth, ready to take shots of Haruka on the podium, while his ex-wife is in the audience, making sure he's okay. But this is it. Kamaki Motors is ready to set off with its race car, decorated with all its sponsors, as well as the entire community watching the scruffy dog going against the purebreds. And the race is off. And so far so good. The sponsorships help with the tyres, but that won't be enough for Haruka to land that win. He will need to use everything he's learned to get that victory. But Belsariso proves to be quite the challenge, as they hold the first and second place. It will be difficult to beat them, and so this is where the battle commences. That is until the lead hits a lapped car, damaging its wings. Now Toshiki would need to pit so he can maintain his lead once the car has been repaired. However, he decides not to pit and let the rival he resented for the entire series take the lead once more, showing that he will not let his inferiority complex affect him or his friends, despite being a proper tsundere. So that's one obstacle down, and meanwhile Haruka climbs up the ranks at an insane pace, and soon enough he's behind Satsuki. This is so close now. Everyone is egging Haruka on. You got this. You got this. You got it. Kouya is watching intently, but his camera is not ready. It seems like deja vu again. But after a kick up the arse by his chief editor, Kouya's mind is in a frenzy at what to do. You got this. You got this. You got this. Minutes feels like hours as Haruka is just behind Satsuki. He's so close to achieving his goal. After all he's been through, after all the people he's met. It's the final stretch. Haruka is still on the tail end. There are only seconds until Satsuki crosses the finish line. But just before he does, Haruka gets one more flashback. And he remembers. And he wins. He bloody wins. Finally, after so long, the underdog has only gone and done it. But what about Kouya? Well, his camera is to his face, and he snaps a picture, then another one, then another, then another, then another one. So many pictures have been taken, and we can see that the energy and passion return to Kouya's eyes as he sees his friend cross the finish line and looks at him with glee. Everyone goes crazy as Kouya continues taking photos of Haruka, celebrating with the other team, and before you know it, the main event arrives. The reason why all this started, the podiums, and with Haruka in the middle. Kouya finally snaps the shot he promised so many episodes ago, a picture of Haruka fulfilling his promise as he weeps tears of joy. Man, that episode was off the rails. I never thought I could be so invested in a race, but all the build up from the previous episodes had led to this moment, and the final episode just nails it. Sure, there aren't many races, but it still works, and it makes me happy that I was able to get so much enjoyment out of this show and fully buy into what story the creators wanted to tell. Compared to other racing animes, Overtake is not a show that relies on high adrenaline racing that goes on for episodes on end. And if you go into this thinking that, then you'll be disappointed by the lack of racing in this show. But if you open your mind, you'll find that it's a story about how two characters become friends as their lives change for the better thanks to each other, and how this amazing sport had brought them close together. This goes back to my point earlier, as this anime reminded me why I love cars in the first place. Here we see two characters form a bond which couldn't have happened without a sport like this, and it shows the friendship these communities can foster just by watching or taking part in it. I will never, ever, ever like sports. But that doesn't mean I'm ignorant to what it can do to people. I've seen so many people struggle in their daily life, and I also know that sports can really bring people together and give them that chance of happiness that they always crave for. And Overtake captures that beautifully. So that's why I'm giving this anime 2 thumbs up. Yeah, honestly, it is amazing. Like, I never got so much enjoyment from a sports anime in my life. And you could say that this anime is the greatest anime in the world. At least in 2023.